Morning, friends. Good morning, friends. I'm so glad to see you here. I'm so happy to see so many registering for this event today. There's so much that that's going to occur today. I wish I could attend all of the breakouts. But anyway, for at least 3 decades, many friends, along with scientists and other environmental activists, have been warning of the effects of global warming and the consequent climate disruption. Now that more of us understand the crisis is existential, we need to find ways to act. Today is dedicated to some of the technical approaches to mitigation, but I would like to warn that though the offerings advanced in this program today are important, and we need also to be aware of the larger picture. It is a picture that includes our ability to know what is of value and how we can live by those values, even when it's difficult. Several years ago, I came across a quote from a climate scientist, a former US climate advisor and Yale professor, Gus Spaeth. He said this: I used to think the top global environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. Today, we are challenging you to identify at least one step you will take that will decarbonize your lives. Please put that step with your name in the chat after the breakout groups. We also ask you to be mindful of Gus Spaeth's words that in addition to the technical fixes, we need spiritual and cultural transformation that bring us into a world of non-extractive, non-exploitative, and compassionate relationships. Ruth?
Thanks, Pat. I just want to welcome the climate witness stewards who are with us today. And what I would like you to do is unmute. And when I say your name, just say a word, what meeting you're from, and that way your little screen will get highlighted on everybody else's screen so they can see what you look like. So we'll start with Jackie Bonomo, who is our clerk.
Hi, I'm on the Climate Witness Steward group, and it's been a wonderful connection with other people in around Philadelphia yearly meeting. I've kind of overseeing the liaison folks from Collin Quarter, Upper Susquehanna Quarter, and I've recently adopted Southern Quarter, but I need to connect with those folks. And I'm from State College Friends Meeting. We've had a climate justice working group here for 4 years.
Thanks, Jackie. And next, Robert Green from Princeton Meeting.
Hello, folks. I'm Robert Green. I'm from Princeton Meeting. I'm a climate witness steward and also serve on the Quaker Life Council of PYM. Good to see you.
Thank you, Robert. Pat Finley is here, obviously.
Yes, I'm here and I've raised my hand because my camera is not on. So I'm from Old Haverford Friends Meeting. I'm a climate steward. And I'm also co-clerk with Ruth, the Eco-Justice Collaborative.
Thanks, Pat. I don't see Andrew Anderson or Nader Jivanji. Andrew's from Central Philadelphia Meeting and Nader's from Princeton Meeting. Sorry, they couldn't join us today. So I guess I'm the last one who's here. My name is Ruth Darlington, and I'm from Medford Meeting in New Jersey. And I like that, Jackie, that you talked about which meetings you're sort of supposed to be connecting with. I connect with the liaisons from Haddonfield Quarterly Meeting, and my other responsibility is Salem Quarterly Meeting, working on that connection. But if you're here from one of those meetings and you feel like that connection hasn't been made yet, feel free to contact me. When we send out a follow-up email, you'll have all of our email addresses. The other thing I did want to mention today, before we go into the main program, is the Justice 40 initiative in relation to the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with Justice 40, which was President Biden's executive order requiring that 40% of federal dollars spent on a variety of climate change programs go to environmental justice communities. What's different about the Inflation Reduction Act is that those requirements are actually written into the statute. So now there are a number of programs that require state and local governments to prioritize environmental justice communities. And we put in our advanced documents a breakdown of the environmental justice provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act that comes from Harvard University's Environment and Energy Law program. And in that document, there is a link to another analysis by the Justice Solutions Collective, which is a group of BIPOC and other affected communities who are in the front line, or I should say, frontline communities that are most affected by climate change and are building on their own experience and input and expertise to develop solutions that are equity-based. So I recommend both of those analyses for you. And just keep in mind, the reason we have our communities in the title of this program is because this act has the capacity, if we use it, to really help communities that have been bearing the brunt of the energy burden over the decades. So I am passing it back to, I guess we'll start with you, Liz, right?
Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to start with, I'm going to share my screen and start with a presentation on the Inflation Reduction Act. And let's see if I can find it here. Minimize this so I can see. Okay, can everyone see this? Is that a yes? Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sure you know, but the Inflation Reduction Act, or is the new IRA, and it is absolutely massive. It's this really massive piece of legislation, which covers many things, one of which is climate. And the $369 billion that it is projected to allocate for climate action is the largest single investment in climate action ever made by any country. So it's just really a phenomenal law. And I use this initial graph here because if things go as projected, as planned, the IRA will reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the United States very steadily. So we're about here on this little line graph, and the IRA sets in motion a series of changes that will cause reductions very, very steadily. And as Ruth already mentioned, it is governed by Justice 40. So much of this improvement is going to be happening in lower income and minority communities across the United States. So how is it going to do all of this? So the notion here is that it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions somewhere between 32 and 40% by 2030. That's just 7 years from now. So this is a really rapid reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. But what I'm going to just caution us to understand is that most of the action that is going to be implemented through the IRA requires us. It requires Americans to act. So this is not automatic by any means. The IRA is organized in a way which is unusual for legislation. It is what I call push and pull. So it and another more common way of saying that would be it focuses on both supply and demand. So it's really designed to transform America's fossil fuel energy economy to a clean energy economy. And that requires both supply of clean energy increasing very rapidly, and it requires Americans to demand clean energy. So most of what you'll see today is our side of the story, is the consumer side of the story. We have to demand clean energy. It's not going to magically happen. We have to become active participants in this market transformation process. So eliminating carbon emissions begins with all of us. We need to decarbonize all of our end uses. That's heating, water heating, cooking, even lawn care, and transportation. We don't cover lawn care today, but that's a really easy one. And where are these greenhouse gas emissions? Many of you are very familiar with this, but this is the 2020 pie chart. Transportation is now our largest greenhouse gas emissions sector. Electricity and industry are pretty close together. And then residential buildings, residential commercial buildings are fully 13%, followed by agriculture. So decarbonizing the electricity sector remains the first step. As we decarbonize electricity, that is the generation of electricity, we rapidly decarbonize all other sectors. So electricity and electrifying, using clean electricity to decarbonize all the other sectors is the way we get this done. I love this little graph or this little chart from the EPA, which kind of brings together all of these concepts in one simple little diagram. The IRA has incentives for solar energy, high energy efficiency, improving the energy efficiency of our buildings, heating and cooling, water heating, cooking, and transportation. So it's just a massive array of improvements that are possible and available to us. But I keep coming back to this simple little diagram, which I think does a great job of focusing on the layers of decarbonization, I'll call it, that are underway. So the first one I'll talk about is a set of improvements called energy efficiency home improvement credits. These are tax credits. And some of you may remember we used to have tax credits in the United States for energy efficiency. And Paul and I did take advantage of these actually back in the day, some years ago. But these are now bigger. So these are a 30%, what is in this law is a 30% tax credit for home energy efficiency improvements, regardless of your income. So this is for everyone. And I'll just enumerate some of these. So there is.
And you can get $2,000 tax credit.
Right, roughly a $2,000 tax credit for a heat pump and heat pump water heaters. The heat pump water heater is going to be a little bit lower than that because that's not what they cost. So this is a kind of a maximum tax credit. Central air conditioning that is of a certain efficiency will be $300. Energy audits, there's a tax credit. And I think this is the first time the government has ever funded a tax credit for energy audits. Energy audits cost around $500, so this is helpful. Air sealing, insulation, exterior doors of a certain quality, windows and skylights. So if you were to start, I would really highly recommend, if you've never done this, get an energy audit and start with air sealing and insulation. These are the three keys right here, because once you reduce the requirements, the heating and cooling requirements of your home, you can then reduce the size of the equipment required to heat and cool your home. So you want to start with these right here in the middle. And the maximum credit per year is $1,200 unless you're going for a heat pump. And then you can go into this other category. Details will be forthcoming from the IRS and Treasury. And these details, we will follow up as these details are released to provide you access with that information. The next set of rebates, the next set of incentives is this massive rebate program, high efficiency electric home rebates. This is a set of rebates that are in 2 tiers, if you will, based on income. And this is where the Justice 40 comes into place. So I'm very familiar with low income programs. This is not a low income program. This is for people who are above low income, but are not wealthy. So this is for everybody who does not qualify for the free low income weatherization assistance program, for example, who's above that income cutoff, which is 200% of poverty. So it's everybody who's above that, but really, not wealthy. So this is going to cover a huge swath of every state. It's going to cover most people in every state. So, but again, there are 2 columns here because if your income is below 80% of the area median income for where you live, for your zip code, you will qualify for an $8,000 rebate for a heat pump. If your income is above 80%, but below 150%, so in other words, you're right around the area median income, you'll qualify for half of that. So the way these columns, this is the column on the left is 100% of the level, and the column on the right is half of that. So each of these items is eligible for a massive rebate. And this is just a game changer. This program will be administered by states. So the details on exactly how this is going to go into position are not yet known. So we need to wait. And some people are saying this may not go into place for some number of months. I've heard as long as 12 months. So we don't yet know exactly when these rebates will be available. But again, we will follow up as soon as that guidance becomes known. This, in the meantime, this is a really fun calculator. One of the groups that we put into the documents is this group called Rewiring America. It's a nonprofit, and they do really excellent work. So this is a great little calculator. Encourage you to use this just to get a preview of what you are eligible for. So what it asks you, very simple questions, like you don't put in your name, you don't put in any personal data in, you just put in a few simple data points, and it will immediately tell you everything in this rebate program that you personally are eligible for. The electrical vehicle tax credit, there we have a breakout session on EVs. If you want to learn a lot more detail, but again, the IRA has completely changed the game. The credit for new vehicles is $7,500. And for the first time, there is a credit for used EVs, and that's $4,000. The IRS website, believe it or not, has become useful for something other than downloading forms. And it's full of information. And so I'm using 2 links here to that website that detail the requirements and the details about this. But if you're interested in EVs, I encourage you to go to the breakout. There are many new things, but one of the things I wanted to pause here and say, the EV rebates have really been designed to do exactly what I was saying earlier about push and pull. So the Biden administration is determined to bring manufacturing back to the shores of North America. And these rebates do require for the new EVs that the vehicles be assembled in the United States. So we are seeing companies like Hyundai and other companies move back or move operations and bring operations into the United States in order to qualify for the IRA. So this is going to be an absolute scramble to do battery manufacturing as well as vehicle manufacturing in the US. In North America, I should say, it doesn't have to be the US. So why should you do all these things? You know, all of us here on this call, we're really interested in the environment and, you know, restoring environmental integrity in the United States and worldwide. But a lot of people are more interested in saving money. So why really do this? In addition to all of the greenhouse gas emissions that you'll save, you will actually save money. It's estimated that if you were to do all of these things, you could save $2,600 per year per household. And this assumes the following, that your energy efficiency savings would be roughly, you know, somewhere between 15–20%. And that's very, very typical. That's very doable. So you can reduce your existing bills by that level. High efficiency electric appliances, frankly, there isn't quite enough data to tell you exactly how much you'll save, but they are so efficient now that you will be saving energy and money. Solar energy, again, has improved so much that you will be seeing savings. My experience, we own a solar system, and our data is that we're going to pay back for that system in about 9 years. And the system will last another 15 to 20 years. And so we're looking forward to free electricity after the first 9 years. So it's a phenomenal investment. And EVs, electric vehicles, the fuel savings alone on EVs are now about $1,700 a year. And in addition to the fuel savings, you do save on maintenance because there's so few moving parts. So all of this adds up to a whopping level of annual savings. So electrification is really good on your pocketbook as well as on the environment. So this slide is just to help us, you know, remember the magnitude really of this law and the work it's going to take to transform the United States. And our energy economy is massive. It's massive, and transforming that is underway. And this diagram, I think, does a good job of showing all of the elements that are required. And what I would say here is that human health will improve as we see this energy economy transition from fossil to clean energy. We will see so many human health benefits, and hopefully not just related to humans, but, you know, broadly, cleaning our air is a really big deal. Beyond what I've already mentioned, there are many other IRA clean energy initiatives in this law. There's a greenhouse gas reduction fund with $27 billion. Part of that is a green bank, which we hope to see shortly. There are environmental and climate justice block grants totaling $3 billion. These will be coming at the local level. Energy efficiency and electrification for multifamily buildings. Again, this will be, we will begin seeing this coming through at the state and local level. And a low emissions electricity program. So there are incentives in this law very, very broadly, and that's not even all of it. That's just a few of the additional initiatives that are built into the IRA. these are my three go-to favorite resources. This IRA Reduction Act guidebook, Inflation Reduction Act guidebook, sorry, is an online tool. It's referred to as the White House IRA guidebook, and it is the place that the federal government is publishing all of the final guidance. So as the guidance becomes final, it will be listed here. And this is a accessible tool for everyone. So this is one of my go-tos. And I already talked about the Rewiring America is a fabulous group, really great resources that they're producing, and the IRS website. This is going to be key for lots and lots of detail. So I highly recommend these. And thank you. And the last thing I'll say about this, and you'll probably hear me say it again today, is the sooner you start, the more you save. So we're not suggesting that you run out tomorrow and buy anything, but I am suggesting that you begin thinking about it and that you make a plan, and that plan will help you begin to organize this process for yourself and for your family and for your community. So thanks very much, and let's open it to questions. Margot.
Yes, Liz, thank you for that presentation. How do we access those links that you gave us? You gave us a lot of links. I think some are in the information we were sent, but not all of them.
We are going to be sharing the slides. So all of these slides will be available. And I turn to Olivia to give us an idea of how quickly.
So the slides are going to be in the recording, which will be on YouTube and also the Eco Justice Collaborative website. And I would say within the week, that should be turned around. Our videographer is relatively quick about that, but the breakouts will need to be, it's a little bit more complex this time because the breakout sessions are being recorded and being integrated into the main room session. So I would say a week.
Thank you very much.
Thomas?
Hi. My question has to do with whether installations that we did in 2022 will fall under these rebate programs.
The only rebate that is retroactive to 22 is the solar rebate. So if you installed solar in 22, your tax credit is 30%. But if you bought a heat pump, I must admit that I advised a friend of mine around Christmas time to see if his plumber would date the invoice in January, and his plumber agreed. So, you know, if your plumber or your installer, your HVAC installer is willing to date the invoice in 23, it will qualify, but otherwise it will not.
Thank you.
Lynn.
I don't know if I'm visible. I've my
Yes.
You are. I'm visible. Oh, very good. Well, first of all, I thank you so much for such a clear presentation and at such a good pace and not too much detail. I mean, it was just very well received.
Thank you. You have a question?
Thank you. I thank you. Yes, what I often find I want with these kinds of projects that have to do with issues that I'm not an expert on is to have someone who's a kind of a broker person I can go to and say, advise me in general, someone who's not going to be gaining profit from selling me anything, any goods or, you know, but really looking at my situation and saying, well, there's this and this and this, someone really with your kind of broad expertise. I think that would be so helpful to people.
I agree. I thought you were going to talk about contractors, but I do agree that it is very useful. And I think, you know, the broker role, you know, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I think the broker role to some degree is going to be played in the detailed regulations and the detailed standards that the federal government and the states will roll out. So in other words, I will say that energy efficiency, for example, the quality of product is improving so rapidly. And many people don't know that, you know, and people go to replace their windows and they buy, you know, an Energy Star window, not realizing that there are much better windows available. So I think that the guidance that the federal government and the states are going to provide will help eliminate crummy things, you know, and really force people to buy only really high quality, durable material. So I think that's a key, is you know, making sure that consumers are not investing in anything that's substandard. And I do think we need to figure out in all of our regions how to help people find the right contractors. And I'm hoping that the state of Pennsylvania, for example, and New Jersey will play a role in pre-qualifying contractors, if you will, and making sure that there's lists of available, you know, highly qualified contractors. Because I think that that's the greatest hesitation point for you know, for homeowners, is people don't want to do the wrong thing, you know, and they may not know the right, you know, installer. So I think that you know, your questions are right on. Brad Stalker.
Yes, hi. I'm in Florida, and so the questions come from our experiences here. Is there going to be anything that pushes the state to accept what the federal government is putting through? And also, we've had it on a local issue in the sense of, for example, solar panels. We were given a grant to do solar panels for our meeting house, and the city of Coral Gables, and their infinite lack of wisdom, rejected it because of aesthetic value, and their board of architects pushed back and said we couldn't do it. So are there going to be any kind of, you know, laws or push to get past these kinds of, you may know our governor DeSantis, and they
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, is there going to be any kind of bats as well as in the pushing part, you know?
The federal government will not issue bats. And you and I, Brad, we're the bats. So it's going to be up to all of the advocates in every state to improve, increase, and focus our efforts to make sure that the state, and that's why I use the term push and pull, because the federal government is, you know, creating all this opportunity, but the demand has to come from consumers, and consumers must be active. We must not be passive. So it's got to be an active role that we take. Paula?
I had a similar question to the one about last year. Obviously, many of these rules are being written right now and not complete, and wondered if there is a virtue to delay another 5 or 6 months if you're about to do any of those things. And I'll let you answer in a second. I just also wanted to respond to what you said about pre-qualification, and to mention that I think those of us on the call should also wear not just our householder hat or residential hat, but our meetings, our retirement homes, our Quaker schools. We are all newly authorized, if you will, to take advantage of some of these subsidies as nonprofits. So I'm hoping we'll have that thinking cap on as we listen today, and specifically to Liz's comment about a broker or someone who is not representing a particular company. And here in the greater Philadelphia area, we have a Quaker who does this for schools and retirement homes, and that's Practical Energy Solutions. So I'll just put his name out. It's founded by a Quaker from my meeting. He does excellent work and has done work with our school, so I'm happy to be a referral for him. But I do think for any of us representing or thinking about being property clerks or people who work at any of our schools or retirement communities, this should be top of our list as well. So Liz, my question to you was about
Delane. Yeah, I think if you want to be sure that you qualify for the rebate, it is better to wait. because there will be final guidance coming shortly. I hate to say that, but that is true. But I'll just share my own personal story is I talked Paul into going forward with an induction stove in October. And I just love the darn thing. It's just phenomenal. So I'm, it made me very happy over Christmas to cook on an induction stove. So, it depends on you. It's whether I'm one who loves instant gratification. So I couldn't wait any longer for my induction stove. Bill?
Yes. Oh, let me see. There's my video. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, did I
That's
come
okay.
in
Your
front
name
of-
is Bill also. Go ahead.
Okay, so my question is about hybrid vehicles, and I noticed that you were pretty specific to EVs.
Yes.
Will hybrids be included in there?
I don't think so. Marion, can I ask you? Marion Biddle? Marion's on. She's the EV expert. Do hybrids qualify for any rebates?
Hybrid electrics
Yes.
might, but just hybrids, I don't think so.
Well, for example,
you know
a
what?
plug-in hybrid, let's say.
A plug-in hybrid. So the regulations have to do with the size of the battery.
Mhm.
So if I can look it up, but I haven't really looked that much at the hybrid electrics for the rebates. But it is size of battery related and where they're manufactured, like that they have to be assembled in North America.
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
recommend that you
But
check
you know
out
what?
that IRS website. I
Yeah,
think that-
exactly. There is literally, if you just put in EVs on the IRS website, you'll get a list of all the manufacturers and it lists their vehicles that are qualified.
Thank
So
you.
that would be the way to get the answer. Mhm.
Okay.
Bill Cousins?
Thank you, Liz.
Sure.
The two questions. One is in this, with the Justice 40, we're trying to target some of these benefits for low and moderate income households.
Yes.
And it strikes me that especially with a tax credit,
Right.
a huge problem to overcome is the person or the household has to put up the initial funds and then has to wait,
Right.
almost a year to get
Right.
whatever kind of tax credit they're getting.
Right.
Is there any opportunity, for example, with these green banks that you mentioned, to offer low-income loans to people or at least to a bridge loan that would allow them to make the installation and then get the credit the next year? And if it's a low-income person, they may not have enough taxes to get the credit in 1 year. So can the credit be deferred or spread over several years to recoup it?
Yes, the tax credits can be deferred and recovered over several years. I share your concern. When I saw this for the first time, my first thought was, oh boy, this is an incredible opportunity, but this is a swath of the population that have never participated in rebate programs before because, as you say, they don't have the money. They don't have, the $2,000 or whatever it is going to cost in their checkbook. So I submitted recommendations. There is an open period right now for comment and guidance, and I submitted guidance saying every state should consider organizing its rebates into a program for this population so that it'll roll out as a prepaid item. And in other words, that the state is actually covering the cost and the state gets the rebate. The state recovers the rebate on behalf of that individual so that the person isn't doing this themselves. So I think if states go that direction and roll out the rebate program as a program, it will have a very high penetration rate. It'll reach a lot of people. But if you're waiting for a working poor person to, save up enough money to be able to fork over, and buy a heat pump and then wait for his $8,000 a year later, there are not going to be a lot of people doing that. So it's a difference between a small uptake and a really large uptake. And this is the population that needs the help the most. So because they don't qualify for anything and they don't have the cash. So it's really, really important. So I think we have to wait and see. Dave Graybill, and we're probably running out of time. Dave?
Wait, real quick though, hold up.
Sorry.
I just wanted to say that the EV does not roll over the tax credit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mary.
I know the solar does, and I know the EV doesn't, but I don't know about the other ones.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Just three real short ones. Could you email the presentation to all the participants? Have we considered a database for contractors for just the Quaker community where we can put, this was a good person, this was not a good person? And then since PA's legislature is broken, what's the chance we won't get this together for, if I'm doing something right now, which I've done, that I might not be able to take advantage of it this year?
Okay, this does not depend on the legislature. These are federal funds, and it really depends on the Shapiro administration getting his act together. I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen so far coming out of his administration. So I do believe that the state will act quickly, and certainly New Jersey's already on top of this stuff. So and so is Delaware. So I think that we've got a good chance of getting these programs into good position in all three states soon. And the contractor database, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful suggestion. And I hope that the Eco-Justice Collaborative will take that up. Martin?
Liz, could I add something there in response to David? My understanding is for the rebates that are administered by the state, the federal legislation doesn't require the states to have their regulations in place until sometime in 2024. So states that red states that want to drag their feet on this can really drag their feet. Hopefully, as you say, with Shapiro and with a pretty progressive state government in New Jersey and in Maryland and in Delaware, that in our region, the regs will get in place pretty quickly, but they're not required to be in place until sometime in 2024.
Liz?
Yes.
We are cutting into Beverly's time now, so I wonder if we could ask anybody else with a question to put it in the chat. We will be taking those questions and sending them out to the appropriate presenter and make sure you get an answer to this webinar.
Thank you, Ruth.
Can I make just a very quick comment? Because I believe with the EVs purchases and the rebates that the dealership can make the person whole by deducting the amount of the rebate from the purchase price, and then the rebate can be directed to the dealership.
Interesting. Thank you. I didn't know that. All right.
I've heard that, but I haven't confirmed that. I don't know that is actually implemented. It might be a dream, but I don't know. Have you actually heard it happen?
I would like to say that I purchased an EV and I did have the amount deducted immediately from the purchase price by the company. This was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Wonderful. That's great news. Okay, thank you all. Next up. Ruth, are you going to introduce Beverly?
I would be happy to introduce Beverly Ward. She's going to be giving us a Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Beverly's the field secretary for Earth Care, Southeastern Yearly Meeting of Friends, and she's taught at the University of South Florida. She conducts research and provides technical assistance to communities and local and state and federal agencies on environmental and social justice, housing, and transportation issues. Among her publications is Making Black Communities Matter, Race, Space, and Resistance in the Urban South. She's Transportation Resource Board Equity in Transportation Committee Research Coordinator, and she is a member of Tampa Monthly an attender of the DeLand Worship Group. Welcome, Beverly.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to be with you. For those of you who may have seen part of this in the past, I did change some of the slides a little bit, so it won't be so redundant. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and get started. Yeah, I've entitled this "The Earth We Seek" because we have some real opportunities with this upcoming bill. Well, it is in effect. It is not upcoming. It's here. I'm going to focus on the factors that we need to consider as we look at this. I'll get into the weeds of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Talk about the disbursement within Philadelphia yearly meeting states. I'll talk some about Justice 40, give you a case example of how we can use the Justice 40 initiative to think about collaboration with disadvantaged communities and link the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to the Inflation Reduction Act, and a little bit about next steps. I apologize ahead of time because I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, and it's still quite early for some of us to look at numbers. So bear with me. In terms of growth, the human impacts are really pushing this, and the population numbers are very important to think about. And that number is wrong. Okay, yeah. At any rate, what I did here was look at the populations within the counties of Philadelphia yearly meeting, and have all 4 states here, but this is like the percent change. So the and density is also a factor. So just keep that in mind, because a number of the programs that are in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will be are formula based. So they're based on population, and it's a way to think about what's coming to your area and how the money will flow. The other piece of this that is definitely tied with this act is the built and social environment. And when I talk about transportation, I talk about transportation writ large, both access and mobility, and that's very, very much tied together. And we'll see in a minute. There's also a lot of money in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for extreme weather and climate, what I refer to as climate collapse. Also, water quality and air quality are 2 big drivers here. So a little bit about the background of the act. It was signed the 11th month or November of 2021. It's a year old. We're beginning to see some information about the impacts of the act. However, as we'll see, because it is infrastructure, a lot of it is still in the mix of planning. So it's very important to keep that, even though it's over a year old, the funds are being rolled out. It represents $500 million in new federal funds. However, the total package is 1.2 trillion. So don't mention to anybody, but we'll keep it among ourselves. These 2 acts, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment Act, working together are just tons of money that will be available. And so that's why I'm really encouraging your vigilance on how it's used. So, but basically this this $500 million plus focuses on roads and bridges, and that's mostly repair, but there's some things that can be done with that. Greener transportation, and when we talk about that, we're talking about public transit, writ large, weatherization, internet access, water infrastructure, and more. So this is where it gets crazy. And again, my apologies. Basically, based on population, this is kind of the breakdown. That's Rose, Delaware, all three counties have Quaker meetings. So basically all the money in Delaware has some we have an opportunity for Quaker influence. Maryland, it's a portion, it's only three counties again, but there's even more because the other counties are tied up with Baltimore yearly meeting. New Jersey, there are 10 counties, in Pennsylvania, 19. So what does this break out to? And if you email me, I can send you a spreadsheet that has all of the counties and the sort of pro rata share of each county. So this is in addition to this share that's in each state, there's another $12.5 billion in competitive grants that states can apply for. The bridges are, again, repair bridges. And I want to tell you two things about the roads money. This money is tied to the Surface Transportation Act, and there's some opportunity with the Surface Transportation Act, even though this funding is for repair work, it can also be what they call flexed to look at mass transportation options. So just put a pin in that and hold on to it. And moving to mass transportation options. Here's what's available. And for public transportation, this sector of the country has a lot of rail, both commuter rail and passenger rail that can play a part of this, but also greener buses and fixed guideways, other bus rapid transit applications. So one of the things that as we talk about opportunity here, I am really encouraging people to think about the investments in public transportation. And this gets to, making the option of not having to drive and making, because we leave out large shares of the population if we're only focusing on driving. Now, while there will be investments in electronic vehicles, where this particular piece of legislation comes in is with electronic vehicle charging stations. Again, there's money for $2.5 billion for competitive grants. I would encourage people to think about advocating for the placement of EV chargers in more rural areas and also in areas where that would encourage people in the what we can do is encourage this kind of EV charging stations in outlying areas so that we can increase the range of electronic vehicles also in lower income communities. And we'll talk more about that later. The high-speed internet funding is every state's going to get a minimum of like $100,000, and where you see the difference in this is the breakdown in the counties. So $100 million, I'm sorry. But what's important to look at are these numbers of just households that have no internet. And this is where we get into the digital divide, that even in urbanized areas where you think there's lots of internet access, affordability enters into that. So there's money available to help the connectivity. Roughly, anywhere, like for example, in Pennsylvania, among the counties where there are meetings, there's about 1.5 million households that could benefit from this, from the funding that's available to make high-speed internet affordable for these households. There's another pot of money that looks at climate, wildfires, and extreme weather. If this money helps for weatherization, and again, as was mentioned earlier, some of this, if you're looking at red states and blue states and state legislators, what has been happening with a lot of the red legislators is that they're now claiming like, oh, look at what I brought you, even though they voted against the infrastructure investment. But anyway, there's like another $3.5 billion that's available for major projects that states again can apply for. There's money for to protect against cyber attacks. This is basically on the local level and state level to help protect the internet infrastructure of states and local agencies. And a lot of that is just upgrading equipment, and software. Clean water is one of my focus areas, and there is lots of money available for local areas to upgrade water systems. We're hoping that more attention will be focused on low-income communities. I know that there have been problems, we hear about Flint, Michigan, and other areas, but I do know of some problems in New Jersey and other areas with, one of the big problems is that these areas are older and they have older sewage and water systems where those aren't the sexy projects that legislators like to get behind. So nothing's been done. So this is a big problem there. And then there's money for upgrading airports and the systems. And when you get the PowerPoint, this link, the source of all of this is that the White House has made available fact sheets for every state that gives a breakdown of all of these funds. What I have done with the fact sheets for Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey and Pennsylvania is give you a breakdown of like the pro rata share for each county, and I've then summarized it back. So again, I know it's early and all of these numbers, I do that to just impress upon you that there's lots of money, and we have to be vigilant about how the money is spent so that it doesn't become business as usual. For example, some people will say, oh, okay, let's we're going to have more electronic vehicles, so we need more roads, or we need to, that's how we're going to address this issue. And I just, we can't build our way out of congestion. We've got to make sure that all of this works together. And I'll talk more about that and when we have our discussion. We mentioned Justice 40. I'll give you a little bit more about it. It was an executive order that predates both these pieces of legislation. This executive order was signed by President Biden during his first month, within the first week. Well, it was within the first week of his coming into office. And this is a government-wide initiative. And it states, as mentioned by Liz, that at least 40% of the overall benefits from federal investments in climate and clean energy be spent in disadvantaged communities. Originally, there were 21 priority programs, and that number continues to grow. The link here is that to a screening tool that the Environmental Protection Agency and others have rolled out that looks helps us look at where there are disadvantaged communities, and it's still in process. I will of being developed. I'm still making comments to it. As Liz mentioned, I'm one. She was making comments on regarding the infrastructure. I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm making comments on this this screening tool. But here's a screen of this area, East Camden and Albert Village. Everything in the screening tool is broken down by census tract, gives you some population information, gives you some age information. And this particular census tract, there are 7 categories of disadvantage. This particular census tract is considered disadvantaged in all 7 categories. There's a pull down screen. It gives you descriptions of what they mean by climate change, clean energy and energy efficient, clean transit, sustainable households. There's legacy pollution issues, there are health burdens, and then there's workforce development issues in this census tract. So what I am encouraging people to do, if you're looking for areas to advocate and to help the planners, take a look at this tool and think about helping these communities advocate for funding, advocate for jobs, and advocate for reparative work where you see this. Like, for example, this legacy pollution, what's happening here is brownfields, Superfund sites, all kinds of issues that these communities are dealing with. This proximity to the interstate is problematic because I know from past experience that a lot of these households are experiencing have persons with asthma and other respiratory conditions. Okay, so we've gone over the Inflation Reduction Act. I really want you to think about how these two can work together. The biggie on the Inflation Reduction Act is that the Infrastructure Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, has to provide the infrastructure for the Inflation Reduction Act. There are a number of things in the Inflation Reduction Act that play well together with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, but I will draw your attention to first the healthcare provisions, the lower prescription drug costs, and then also the money available for energy and climate change programs. So within the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, there's lots of funding available that focus on green jobs that should be targeted for the disadvantaged communities. There's also the legislation promotes strengthening unions. So just keep that in mind. The downside of the Inflation Reduction Act is that advocates for environmental justice say that there is not enough emphasis in the Inflation Reduction Act. And again, I still see that there's an opportunity to partner with these communities, and some very real solutions were mentioned in Liz's presentation. So the other piece of that was a problem with the Inflation Reduction Act was the government being required to auction some federal land for oil and gas drilling. But there are people who are working on that piece to kind of delay it, so that it may not be necessary. The demand for oil and gas may not be out there in future. So I know I've dumped a lot of information on you. I'm going to stop doing that. I'm gonna, here's my contact information. I think that I've given you enough information for us to get into some necessary trouble. And I'll thank you. And I'll stop sharing my screen. And questions?
Thank you, Beverly. Do we have any questions? You can use the reaction. Actually, I have a question, Beverly. From listening to you today and in previous programs, you emphasized of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, money, how we use it. My internet connection is off, so I'm going to turn my vid. Oh, it is off. Good. How do we as advocates make sure for green programs when the flexibility that it's used in communities that are disadvantaged or disproportionately impacted by environmental issues?
Thank you for that question. What really is important is again the collaboration between for example the Eco Justice Collaborative and the frontline communities and their organizations working together. The other piece of it that we as friends are really good in with is having access to the decision makers. We've been working with I'm trying to not say acronyms, so I gotta pull it. Friends Committee on National Legislation. While that is national legislation, when it comes back to the local level, is to carry the skills that we have from FCNL to the local level. For example, in New Jersey and Philadelphia, it's a bi-state planning agency, Delaware River Valley Planning. DVRIP, and I excuse the acronym, but that's a planning agency that's rolling out, that's making decisions about how the transportation dollars will be spent. They also have a handle on how the not only roads and bridges, but public transportation also. I know some of the work that planning agency does, and they're very open. They even have a website, and I'll make sure to share that in the chat that you can go to. And if you want to become involved, if you are into policy making, they have a very extensive public involvement section where you can become involved in how this money is going to be rolled out. The same thing happens for some of this funding on the county level. One of the with public transportation, SEPTA, Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, I think I got it right, and New Jersey Department of Transportation, they also are very much involved in the decision making. So that's taking the skills that we have built on the federal level, bringing it back home. And this is, in Liz's presentation, we talked about the individual level. I'm saying let's theorize up to the community and state and county level to make sure that we have the infrastructure that we need to implement the inflation reduction policies. Yes, and I have 2 hands raised and I went a little bit long. So Stephanie and then Marty.
Okay, I just want to say we're getting close to our lunch break. We're actually supposed to break at 12:15. So if you all could make your questions or comments short, we want to start with Stephanie.
Yep. My question is, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, am I right that if I live in Burlington County, if I email you, you can give me the Burlington County statistics?
Yeah, the guesstimate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you put your email in the chat too?
It is in the chat.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Beverly, hi, this
Hi.
is Marty. I was looking at the numbers you had in your chart where you broke them down by state and by category. And two of the numbers really jumped out at me as seeming to be out of balance with the rest. And that was for Delaware for both the high-speed internet and the water infrastructure. I don't know if you could pull that slide up again and maybe speak to that a little bit. I thought these allocations were primarily on a per capita basis, but in those calculations wouldn't make sense if that's the case. So I'm wondering how the numbers were calculated.
Right. I can tell you without pulling it up. I looked at the allocation for the state, and then I looked at the counties where Friends have meetings and sort of based it on that. And Delaware only has 3 counties, and each of those counties there's a Friends meeting. So all of the money that goes to Delaware, Friends in Delaware have influence.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, it's only a limited part of the state.
Well, I'm saying that if you were thinking about where I do it for 2 reasons. 30% of the population in Pennsylvania Friends live in counties. Okay. So that's about 30% of the total allocation for the state. So it's just a way of thinking about if, for example, like with public transportation, that's a formula grant. So if you wanted to look at, okay, how much of the public transportation dollars in the Infrastructure Investment Act go to my area, that's how that's a pro rata share.
Your email is not in the chat.
Okay, but for the for the infrastructure, for example, you had numbers indicating about how many people would qualify for the either zero cost or low income or limited access to the internet.
Right.
And Pennsylvania has a population close to 15 times that of Delaware, and the numbers were less. So that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I didn't figure that out.
Yeah. I'll take a look at it, and Marty, put your email in the chat, and I'll send a more in-depth
I very much
explanation.
appreciate that. And,
Sure,
and you and I have interacted before with
Yeah.
the Green Faith Group. So
Right,
thank you very
right.
much. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Marty, for that, raising that question. And thank you, Beverly, so much for this presentation.
So if you have a question, just raise your hand and I may or may not be able to answer it.
And I'll hang out too.
Okay, great. Richard?
Yes, so I'm curious how people who, for instance, are not web enabled or not tuned into these kinds of forums for whatever reasons are able to get the information they need to take advantage of these various programs.
Yeah, I think that the issue, I was thinking about this as Beverly was speaking, the issue of education and getting the word out is really massive. And that's one of the reasons that we're holding this webinar today. I think that Friends have a role to play in communicating this information. And that's something I would like to see the Eco-Justice Collaborative help with. Can we make more tools available to meetings all over the country and work with QEW, Quaker Earth Care Witness, in doing that? The need for education is just really infinite. And as we were talking about all these new technologies, it's a little bewildering. It's happening so quickly for so many people, and they have a lot of questions. So we just, I hope that we will all do a lot more education as we can. I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
Liz, do you want to introduce the next presenter?
Yes, I'd love to. Our next presenters are Baird Brown and Dennis Rowan, and I've been working with both of them in full disclosure on a really, really super exciting new way of going green in Pennsylvania. Baird is an attorney I've known for many, many years, worked for a couple of huge law firms in town and is now the principal in his own firm called Eco in Law. He's got great expertise in clean energy contracting, microgrids, and many other related things. And Dennis Rowan is been working in EVs actually for quite a number of years, so has deep expertise in clean transportation, but also in this area, which is community choice aggregation. So I take it away, Dennis and Baird.
Thank you, Liz. Let me pull up my slides. Okay, can you hear me and see the slides okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Liz and Ruth, and to the gathering. And thanks, Baird, for joining me today in talking about community choice aggregation. I started looking into community choice aggregation back when California became the first community choice state about 12 years ago now. And we started this group about 18 months ago. So even though Liz says it's a new concept, it's kind of another term for it is energy democracy. What a concept, right? That we can choose based on our local community what energy we want to use. So it's actually a very old concept, and Baird will get into the legal ruling that goes back over 100 years that enables it in Pennsylvania. So also in our group, in addition to Baird, is Jim Wiley and Bill Saby from the Sierra Club, Mike Gordon and Claire DePete from Jewel Community Power. And in addition to Liz as a solar industry expert, we have Ron Celentano. As Liz said, we've been at this for about 18 months now, trying to bring CCA to Pennsylvania. I'll go through the definition, the states who have enabled CCA to date, talk about how CCA can be used to achieve your decarbonization goals. We'll go through a case study in New York. Baird will talk about the pathway to community choice aggregation in PA boroughs and towns. And then we'll talk about, instead of action steps, really just one step. CCA can be simple. There are a lot of steps to it, but today our ask is really just for one step from those of you on the call who are willing and able to take that step. Community choice aggregation enables municipalities to determine the default energy offering, including renewable electricity, on behalf of all the residents and small businesses in that community. It replaces the state default supply. As you can see on the map there, our neighbors up in the Northeast of the United States, we're surrounded by CCA states. And then out west, California was the first CCA state. Pennsylvania is blue now. The blue states are actively looking into CCA, and we hope, we're pretty confident that Pennsylvania will turn green and we will have CCAs up and running in 2023. So one misunderstanding is community choice aggregation is for the entire community, not just for municipal buildings. It makes the default energy offering for the entire community, all residents and small businesses. Currently, if you have not chosen through Pennsylvania Power Switch a supply, you are given the state, which is your utility default. Right now, the default supply in Pennsylvania averages about 1 pound of greenhouse gas emissions per kilowatt hour. And you can see the default, there's just a little sliver of solar and wind. It's predominantly unnatural gas. So the big power of CCA is if by default, the state will put you into a supplier. The exciting thing about CCA is your community can say, wait a minute, you can exercise energy democracy and say, we choose our supply to be X, to be 100% Pennsylvania wind, solar, a mix of solar and wind and hydro. So really the situation is a lack of democracy, and CCA is energy democracy in action. So the utility is not responsible, the state is not responsible. Everybody on this call and everybody in Pennsylvania is responsible for your choice. And so that's the power of community choice aggregation, is not one by one, but as a community, exercise what is going to be your energy supply. So the goals are to replace the unhealthy state default with community choice aggregated renewable electricity, to attain price stability through aggregated community buying power, to add local system resilience, economic development, and local jobs, and to provide consumer protection from predatory practices for those who do not understand how to switch through Pennsylvania Power Switch. Community choice aggregation is a way to transition to 100% renewable energy for your community. It's the most cost-effective decarbonization strategy to choose that aggregated contract, which will supply regional renewable energy for all the residents in your town. So this is the carbon inventory, greenhouse gas inventory for one town in Pennsylvania. All of your towns that are under Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission will be able to look up this inventory. Most inventories, residential emissions and mobile emissions from vehicles are 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 of the most polluting sectors. So in this particular town, each year there were 42,160 metric tons from the residential side, 44,950 tons from the mobile side. If they were to choose to electrify their fleet, and even if you don't electrify the fleet, just to choose renewable energy for all the residents, those two sectors combined, they could reduce 87,100 tons a year from just that one community. So it shows the power of community choice aggregation. And the thing is that both of these things are doable right now, and it's local power. It's percolating from the bottom up, local energy democracy. So CCA does not really change the flow of electricity. What it changes is the choice that you make to get that electricity for your community from hydro, wind, solar suppliers, and not buying renewable energy credits from Texas Wind or something like that. The intent is to add Pennsylvania renewable energy and to go to these brokers with an aggregated supply, which encourages more local development. These generators provide the renewable electricity. The transmission system stays the same. Your local utility stays the same. If you were PECO, you would still get PECO supply. If you're with PPL, the utility stays the same. The municipality determines a new default energy supply to residents and local businesses, which allows for consumer protection and to multiply the impact. So the local customers benefit from this new community choice aggregation. You're invoking the power of local choice, producing low rates, price stability, consumer protection, local jobs. The CCA determines the default offering, replacing that state default offering. All eligible residents are enrolled unless they opt out. And the energy supply is selected through competitive bid, and then the local community approves that bid. Any resident who wants to go back to the default supply or go to Pennsylvania Power Switch, they can opt out of the CCA, and there's no penalty for that. So CCA adds a layer of choice. As I mentioned at the top, Joule Community Power is the administrator who we're working with for CCA for PA. In 2015, Jewel Community Power organized a successful New York CCA launch with 20 Westchester County, New York municipalities. Here's a result of that first 30-month contract with those municipalities. It saved $17 million over that 30-month contract. The blue line is the utility supply, the default supply. As you can see, sometimes it costs more, sometimes it costs less. The orange line is the CCA price stable supply. So that price stability is a major advantage of the CCA in addition to sourcing renewable energy. So here's some of the details that Jewel, the actions that they completed in establishing that CCA in New York at no cost to those municipalities. Jewel attended 250 town meetings to educate community leaders and constituents. They reviewed community choice aggregation with the utilities to craft a data transfer and data protection agreement. They reviewed all regulations with the Utility Commission. Jewel ran a request for proposals soliciting energy suppliers for the town residents and businesses. Then they led the CCA towns in negotiating renewable energy supply that protected the consumers. And they advised the municipalities on that supply contract choice. And currently they continue ongoing CCA management for those municipalities. Jewel currently helps 52 municipalities with 410,000 New York households, helping them to procure clean electricity supply and community solar. So from 2015 to 2021 in all of New York, there are now 150 municipalities representing 3.2 million people who have adopted CCA, including 1.2 million low to moderate income residents. They've procured 3 million megawatt hours of renewable energy, which has avoided 770,000 tons of carbon dioxide. They've also conducted over 200,000 hours of public education. See the power in this slide of CCA. Without the CCA, 1 to 5% of New Yorkers switch to clean energy. For those towns with CCA, 80 to 90% of New Yorkers' power is sourced through clean sources. I'm going to turn it over to Baird Brown, who is going to talk about the pathways to community choice aggregation in Pennsylvania. Baird, if you can unmute yourself, and the slide's for you.
Thanks, Dennis. This is a little bit like the numbers presentation. What we hope for the working group is to bring the opportunity for CCAs to all of Pennsylvania. But as we considered the possibilities of legislation in the legislature pre the last election, we looked around for ways to move forward without legislation. And it turns out that Pennsylvania boroughs, as distinct from every other kind of municipality in Pennsylvania, it has the ability not only to purchase electricity for the use of its inhabitants, which most municipalities in Pennsylvania have, but also they can restrict they can basically exclude all other electric suppliers. That's not what we choose to do, but it gives the ability for a borough to say, no, we're not buying the utilities mix of power. We're going to set up our own supply of power. And then if we choose, we can let other people opt out and pick other things, which is exactly what we suggest. But we found this one class of entities that can do it. Next slide, please, Dennis. And Act 138 is the statute in Pennsylvania that created retail choice. And what's important here is that the retail choice statute has exactly the same carve out for boroughs. I think this goes back all the way to when a lot of boroughs had municipal utilities. We're not trying to do that. Your existing utility will continue to own the wires and the distribution system, and in that sense will work just like retail choice does now. But it does allow a borough to basically become the only or pick your become the default supplier, which is what Dennis was talking about, within their borough. Next slide. So this just shows kind of the broad outline of how this works. The township, acting through a program administrator on behalf of its citizens, goes out and does an RFP, as Dennis mentioned, for a supplier. And in that, making that service agreement with a supplier, it not only is getting price terms, but service terms, and what's the mix of electricity, what kind of renewable energy, and it can eventually, it probably would start with buying electricity from existing renewable energy projects or suppliers, but ultimately it can work to at the top right of your diagram, buy electricity from new local projects, which is what we really hope. That's where the, really getting more resilience and sustainability will come from. Everything at the bottom of the diagram is just exactly the way the world works now in Pennsylvania under retail choice. So citizens can still do their own self-generation to put on their own solar, but the utility still does the billing, and except that the energy portion of the bill now comes through the CCA. And next slide. I think I've probably covered 90% of this one already. Like I said, follows the Pennsylvania retail choice law, and really the trick here is not that the local community has to take on a whole lot of new administrative burdens of its own, but it basically hires somebody to manage that process and do all the procuring, and it just sets the terms and what kind of energy and what kind of contract terms that will be offered to their citizens. And we suggest that basically it provides people the ability to opt out with no penalty. Right now, if you sign up under the statewide website, oftentimes those contracts have a serious penalty if you stop before your 2-year or 3-year contract is up. And this means, we would just make sure that we're not taking choice away from people. We're just giving them a better choice. Back to you, Dennis.
Thanks, Baird. Hey, Liz, I don't know if you want to comment on the local projects. So we were very excited, we being the CCA for Pennsylvania Working Group, when we reached out to Liz and Ron as state leaders in solar energy, and got their feedback on how they thought what CCA would really propel solar implementation in Pennsylvania. Liz, do you want to say anything on the local projects on the screen, how CCA works with solar?
Yes, sure. For me, we've been working on community solar, trying to get community solar legislation through the state legislature for about 3 years now. And frankly, it's been terribly frustrating. We've watched during that 3-year period, we've watched New Jersey successfully implement community solar. But Pennsylvania has still been, Pennsylvania is like an ostrich with our head in the tar pit. But we are very, very excited on speaking for the solar industry, very excited about CCA because it's already legal. As Baird, has stated, every borough in Pennsylvania can implement CCA right now. And then we're hoping on the success of the implementation by boroughs that we'll be able to expand to townships, municipalities, and every local government unit. We think that this will bring a lot more solar directly from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is very far behind in its development and use of solar energy. Solar energy is still only 0.6% of our generation mix, which is ridiculous. And we need to rapidly catch up to surrounding states. So for me, this is a massive opportunity for the solar energy industry in Pennsylvania specifically. And we're really looking forward to seeing this happen. And one thing I'm not sure, Dennis, that you mentioned that, I want to mention here because there are a bunch of leaders, local leaders on this webinar. Paula Klein really deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the years of work that she's done, and many others have done with Sierra Club's Ready for 100 program. So many of the boroughs that are really keen to implement CCA are in fact in communities that have signed Ready for 100 commitments. And what I heard from the Narberth leaders of that group was that they've been looking very hard at trying to make their commitment come true. And they've gone through the list of all of the possible options one at a time and, crossed off different options as this one is too expensive, this one is too complicated, this one is, not appropriate. And when we brought CCA to them, they were like, yippee, CCA is the first realistic, affordable option that we can do. And so CCA is a really big opportunity for Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Liz. Just to build on a couple of things there. So as you can see, those local projects, they can be done at the community level. And that's very important for environmental justice folks who maybe one-on-one, they can't pass a credit check, or they live in an apartment, it's not suitable for solar. So they can, through CCA, they can access solar, the benefits of it. And the credit check goes to the aggregated community, and that fact, plus with some of the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act, really can target benefits to environmental justice and Justice 40 communities. So we really have a once in 100,000 year crisis, but we have a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is not a technological solution. This is a person by person, community by community saying, nope, we are choosing this for our community in line with our values. And that's what this diagram simply says. As Baird says, we're not changing anything except we're choosing that clean supply at the community level based on one person by one person going to their town council saying, put this on your agenda, put it to a vote, and then showing up at town meetings and insisting that it happen. So
Dennis, we should allow for questions now.
Yep. So that leads to my last slide. We're really looking for one action. As Liz said, I know we have many leaders here. We want the leaders to go to your town, go to your council, put it on the agenda. We will come, we will present, not for 5 minutes, not for 10 minutes, not for 15 minutes. This deserves the average. Liz mentioned Narberth. Narberth sat down with us for 2 hours. Swarthmore is a leading borough, and the others. put it on your agenda. We will answer every question that night and then follow up. And these other steps are the same steps that were followed in New York, which now, as we mentioned, has 150 towns who are taking advantage of CCA. But we're just looking for that one step. Some of you may be further down the line. What works the best is if we have a champion at the local level, because this is local bottom-up energy democracy. I'll just end. Buckminster Fuller gave me this poem in 1981. It's called Cosmic Plurality. Environment to each must be all there is that isn't me. Universe in turn must be all that isn't me and me. Since I only see inside of me what brain imagines outside me, it seems to be you may be me. If that is so, there's only we, me and we two, which love makes three, universe, perm embracing, cosmic plurality. So basically, this is in 1981. Bucky Fuller said, all these things with greenhouse gases, we have to have all this done by the year 2000. We're now in 2023. So we need steps today, which I know all of you are looking to take. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
I'll just choose hands that are up. Tom Armstrong. Well, Tom is unmuting. George Alexander.
Yes, I have a question related to Kendall Retirement Community where I live, and it would also apply to Quaker schools and other things like that. If we adopted a CCA, if our township, Kennett Township, adopted a CCA policy, would our organization be able to take advantage of it? Right now, we do bulk purchase, electricity purchase on contract every 3 years from a national supplier. If this were attractive to us, would we be eligible to use it? And if our township were able to adopt it?
Yes.
In a word, yes. Any customer, any electric customer can do it. But you folks, I actually worked with you back several years ago. You folks are already doing a pretty great job.
Yeah, and that's kind of the situation in Swarthmore. Swarthmore's EAC voted unanimously for the council to sign a memorandum of understanding to develop an implementation plan. The whole process from that point to where you would actually sign a renewable energy supply could be 6 months, could be 9 months. So it's very important that there's no cost to the borough or municipality for that process. And once there is a renewable supply, with standard procurement now, that supplier, winning supplier, would pay the CCA administrator for administrating on behalf of the town, which has no cost. So no, I should make the point, no one in Pennsylvania is there yet. We're hoping by the end of the summer, we have a couple boroughs who have signed a CCA supply contract. It is a long process, so those of you on the call, it is something that your borough or township would need to investigate. That memorandum of understanding, which is about step 3 after we present to you, is unbinding and no cost for the CCA for PA administrator to develop this implementation plan.
Dennis, we're running a little low on time, so I'm going to call on David Graybill, and that might be the last one we can take before we split into small groups. David?
Thank you. I'm in a township, and I was wondering what are the steps that I would go through to, go and talk to them, and then maybe some initial presentation materials, and, how do I get to this 2-hour meeting that I can have with them?
Yeah, I would say put it on the agenda and say you would like to have CCA for PA come in and present for, it's usually like an hour, and then what we found is there's about an hour of questions. I would say go to your people and say you would like that to happen. And it's totally congruent with your existing climate action plan, or as Liz said, if you've passed a Ready for 100 resolution, it is right there in the language of the resolution. aggregation and community choice.
My thought was, though, that you're going to need to do a little something before they agree to an hour presentation. Do you have any kind of materials or anything like that that I could go in and maybe talk to some of them on the side, or do an initial discussion before I propose 2 hours of their time at a meeting?
Yep. So you could go to ccaforpa.com and have them look. There's two 1.5-hour webinars there, and there's some frequently asked questions. But that I would say you need a leader in your community who is going to carry the ball. And as I said, it's bottom up. And if they have a resolution, what some towns have done, if they've gone through the resolution, they say, hey, here, look at CCA checks all the boxes. We already spent 300 hours on this resolution. Boom, there it is. There's your presentation right there.
Thanks. That link broke up. Could you put that in the chat?
Yep, it's already there. I'll put it again. Yep.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm going to suggest, if you did not get your question answered, please write it in the chat and we will get it answered for you. And now I'll turn it over to Olivia, our expert, who's going to break us into small groups. Are we waiting for people to rejoin?
Well, while we wait, perhaps some people would like to share something that bubbled up in the breakout room for them.
Raise your hand if you'd like to share. Yay, Hollister.
Hey there. Well, I have done practically everything on this list, so it was hard to find something new, but I just got an induction oven at home, and now I'm moving to Folkways where they have regular electric. So I'm going to start, lobbying that all of their new stoves are induction ovens. And I think I can buy a stovetop to go over the regular electric oven that's there. So that's one thing I'm going to do. But also Rita Varley.
I say, watch out, Folkways.
Yeah, Rita Varley attended the CCA one. Rita, I want to work with you on going to Montgomery County or whatever our borough is and get working on, getting these guys to talk to them. I don't even know what borough it's in. It's in Montgomery County.
Would anyone else like to share what their next step's going to be? George, Alexander.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to get in touch with Hollister because I'm at Kendall working on the same kinds of things that Hollister wants to work on, and I will put my email in the chat. But yeah, what I'm going to be working on next, I think, so in the breakout room I was in, which was decarbonization, we had Steve Clark, who advised Radnor meeting on their meeting house, and I'm going to invite him to present here at Kendall some of the ideas that he shared that helped at Radnor.
Awesome. Rita, do you want to share?
Yes. I want to join Hollister, and we're going to be a team. I can see it. I've been plotting for months on what I'm going to do when I get there.
Great.
But yeah, we have already good committees to work with, and we're going to follow up on this.
Great.
Barbara?
Yes, on a more personal level, I've decided I'm not going to do as much flying. I'm going to use buses and trains more, but especially trains. And I'm hoping that they're going to be using more electric trains. And the other thing is I'm going to try to stop buying things from China or even from California and try to be more local.
Yeah, every step counts. That's really important. Transportation other than individual cars and airplanes is really important. Tom Armstrong?
Yeah, this helped me to know that the electric car is out of my price range right now. So I'll wait a little bit.
Do you mind if I speak to that?
Sure, I don't mind.
Okay. Between the federal government, the company that you buy it from, and the state, I discovered that a $40,000 car really only costs $25,000. You might want to look at the specifics.
Yeah, that's still out of my price range.
Well, and that was new, maybe a used. Okay.
Remember that the IRA also gives rebates and tax credits for used electric vehicles, in case that makes a difference.
Is that the Irish Republican Army?
Margot?
And oh,
Yes, I decided that I realize I need to start with an energy audit.
Steve Locken.
Yes, I have a sort of a comment question. It comes from a solar installer that some of us have used. But anyway, he recently called me and said that Pennsylvania PECO is going to be switching to timed metering, which means that you'll pay different prices depending on the time of day that you use the electricity. But it's also going to affect the time of day that you draw back electricity if you're a solar person like myself. So that it actually would pay me to install batteries to store my electricity so I could provide that electricity to the grid at the right time of day to earn the maximum credit for it. So do we know anything about that, Liz?
Yes. So what he's discussing is called a time of use rate. So it's a TOU rate, time of use rate. It's already in place. It is not mandatory. You have to opt into it. You have to choose it as a customer. But if you go on PECO's website right now, and just Google time of use rate, you can find a really neat calculator that they have, and you can enter your account number. And I'm sorry, it'll take all of your usage data and tell you whether or not it's economical for you to go on to time of use. So if you have an electric vehicle, they've structured this rate to really favor EV charging. And if Marion's on the call, jump in if I say something that's incorrect here, but there are 3 periods of time. There's peak, which is going to be a lot more expensive than you're currently paying. There's off peak, which is after it's like the periods of time around peak. And then there's a period called super off peak. Super off peak is midnight to 6 a.m. Super off peak is an absolute bargain. It's only like 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's less than half of what you're currently paying for generation. So if you've got an EV and you want to save money on charging, you have a timer on your EV charger. You have it go on at midnight and go off at 6 a.m. So you will be guaranteed to save money every time you charge your car up, and it will add very little to your load. So it's the time of use rate is not for everybody. Believe me, it is not for everybody. This is one of those, you got to know what you're doing when you move forward with time of use. But if you've got solar on your home and an EV, it's almost certainly going to save you money. And as your point on batteries, if you want to charge up your batteries and discharge them during peak, you can be making money doing that. You can be, increasing your savings. So it's a big deal. Sorry, Paul Ricker wanted to say something.
A couple things. I would like to emphasize what Margot had asked about, and someone mentioned the energy audit. It's absolutely essential, and that can serve the role that someone asked, is there a broker? How do we do this? The energy auditor qualified. There are a number of people that are actually engineers that do this work, and there's a comprehensive plan that could be set out at the end, and then kind of strategize how your money's spent, and then have a short-term, mid-term, or longer-term goal. So I would emphasize that and reinforce that concept. I also would like to put in a plug for the organization called checkbook.org, which is a membership community-based organization, and it covers the Delaware Valley. There are also checkbook.org affiliates in the Washington area and Minneapolis. So certain regions where you can get information on all kinds of vendors that's provided by customers, consumers. But right now, on the most recent issue, there is one really focused on heat pumps. There's really extensive ratings on HVAC contractors. There's advice on what you need to think about in a contract and what you want to be looking for with your contractor in the documents. So
And you have to pay for that service, is that right?
the checkbook, which part? The auditor?
Checkbook.
I think it's $35 a year. You probably can go to the website and get some basic information, but I've been subscribing for many years. It's incredibly useful. And then the audit, as mentioned, there is a rebate associated, which would help defer the cost of the actual audit of a home.
And what was the name of that checkbook.com?
.org.
Org.
All right.
David Graybill? Okay, well, we're waiting for David. Jackie Bonomo?
I decided I've done a lot of steps already, but to get an induction stove this year, to research EVs. I have a 11-year-old hybrid, but it's not a plug-in. And then look into CCAs for State College area involving West Penn Power, First Energy. So that's where.
Wow, that's a great list. Thanks, Jackie.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, David. Go ahead.
I think I'm going to try and go talk to my township about the CCA. So I'm pretty excited about that. A lot of these other things that I've been just implementing, I'm getting my second set of split unit heat pumps installed here in the next couple of weeks. But I was pretty excited to know that there's some of the electrical work I had to do is qualifying for credits and rebates. So that was exciting. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. That's great to hear. And Hollister?
Just a quick one. For those of us who have switched to 100% renewable electricity providers, will PECO still give us the off-peak rate? Do we have to buy their dirty electricity? That was a yes?
I believe it's a yes. But what I would do is.
No, it's a no.
Oh, it's a no. Oh, is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, this Marion.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
a no. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're still here, Marion. You know more about the details. So it's a no. You have to be buying your generation from PECO.
Yes, I mean, what they told me was the third party, they can do it themselves if they want to, but it's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to turn this back to Ruth and Pat, I think.
Pat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you want to do the next steps or?
Well, I'm thinking that Liz pointed this out earlier. There is so much to learn here. And we could easily have a 3-hour session on each one of the breakout rooms in which we explore very carefully what we can do. But we don't have that option today. So we could only cover, sort of skim over the top. But some of the takeaways I've been hearing is that people are more interested in, or have a renewed interest in energy audits and exploring ways to insulate their homes and make them energy efficient. So in the breakout room that I was in, Steve Clark talked about the time of use and whether the buildings can hold the heat or coolness throughout the day and throughout the night. All of these things are factors that we know, but we don't think about putting into our plans for our homes.
Ruth, do you have some other things?
A totally different subject. None of the breakout rooms were able to be recorded. I saw something in the chat asking about that. So we will make any slide presentations that were part of that breakout room, those breakout rooms, we will be making them available. I don't know if Olivia wants to talk about how, because I don't know how, but I just wanted to reassure people that everything that was on a slide presentation in a breakout room will eventually be in your hands.
I'd also like to ask our facilitators to maybe write up a short summary of their breakout room if they're able, and we can share that with you too.
I just want to add before we close that we are planning to schedule a follow-up webinar to this thread gathering sometime probably late spring. We don't have a date yet, but as the final guidance is coming from Treasury and the IRS, we want to bring that to you. So we will be scheduling and putting together another presentation. So look for that coming, that announcement will come out from PYM.
We'll probably be doing more than one. We'll probably be doing multiple webinars going forward. As we have more information available on the IRA and the Infrastructure Act and how we can access funding, we will put out the information that we're going to have a webinar on it. So in addition to that, we will have other webinars on other different climate subjects going forward.
Did you want to say anything about the 501c4?
Yes, we are beginning to develop a 501c4. It differs from a 501c3 in that first it's a charitable organization, but we are able to lobby with it. So probably in the next few months, we will be notifying you about ways to interact with your congressmen or legislators about policy. We are not able to do that as a church, PYM, but we can do it as a separate 501c4. So I'd like to alert you to pay attention, and we'll be sending out information when we are in operation.
Pat, I'd like to add something that somebody who's working on that. This will be focused on mostly on state and local legislation. We're not trying to take the place of FCNL, not at all. But we need to be able to work with our state legislators and county and even township officials, and that we will have the power to do that with a 501c4. So this is going to be a big help, and we're including not just the states that are right within PYM, but what do we call ourselves? Mid-Atlantic, right? So, friends from New York or, a few other surrounding states that could also work through us. We will be welcoming contributions, but you won't be able to get a tax deduction for contribution to a 501c4.
But it occurs.
I'm involved
I'd like
in
to
that too, and I just want to emphasize and agree with what Bruce said. The purpose of this is only to work on state and local issues. FCNL, of course, deals with the national stuff.
I'd like to, I'm sorry, I'd like to say that we may work on federal issues because we will be more flexible than FCNL, because some of the work they do is constrained by their priorities. So sometimes we have different priorities than FCNL, and we might want to follow those up.
It occurs to me that just the example of CCA being limited to boroughs in Pennsylvania shows that there's room for advocacy at the state level that could really make a difference in people's efforts to get to choose clean energy. And having a 501c4 that lets us advocate for things like that is going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
Richard Cole has his hand up. Sorry, Richard, did you have a question?
Well, no, it's more that the energy audits, PICO does provide those, and they're pretty cheap. I don't know if they're as thorough as you might get elsewhere, but I've had that done, and yeah, I think it was like $35, and they provide LEDs and that sort of thing along with the audit. So I just wanted to put that out there for folks.
Yeah, the PICO audit is an excellent place to start. So if you haven't done that, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think they're $49 now, but still good.
I'd like to say that I just bought a heat pump ventless dryer from LG, and it's remarkable. It's a really good dryer, and it's very gentle on your clothing. My next step is the induction stove. Anyone have any questions?
Just want to thank you all for coming. This has been a great gathering and wonderful to see everyone. So thanks so much.
Actually, I had a question.
David had the question.
Is there something that will be, I got into the decarbonization study group. I'm afraid I missed the context earlier because I wasn't able to attend earlier, but I was interested in if there's anyone discussing carbon capture methods and practicalities now or in the future. Like carbon dioxide capture, basically.
I don't know. Is Steve still on the line?
Yeah, I am on the line. The title was truncated for that session, and it was I think it's supposed to be, right, Bert, decarbonizing your meeting house.
Yes.
So we weren't talking about that anything like that.
So unless you have your own power plant in the meeting house, it wouldn't be appropriate.
Yes, I don't think that's the case. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. It was very interesting anyway, even if it wasn't exactly what I expected.
We will be exploring carbon capture and agricultural issues in the future.
Oh, okay. I'd very much like to be involved in that.
Okay, David had a question. Do we have time for that?
Sure.
David?
Great, thanks. I tried to get this asked in the breakout room, and I booted myself out of the breakout room prematurely. My question is on the justice side. How can CCA be made as interesting as possible to communities that are disadvantaged? I'm thinking in particular of the community group Circle in Chester, Pennsylvania. And if they're going to promote CCA, they're probably going to have to be able to show people that it's not going to cost more, or possibly that, you know, over time it will work out better because price fluctuations will come out to people's advantage. I was just wondering if Dennis or somebody could comment on that. And I'm sorry I didn't get into the breakout room.
Yep, it calls for some details, you know, and some hypothesizing. It has been done in New York where they have set aside subsidies in CCA that subsidize those at lower socioeconomic levels. So even if the aggregated purchase was higher, they supported those people through the CCA by aggregated savings dedicated to that population. So you're asking a detailed question. It can be done, and it is being done. There are IRA funds that CCA around the country through the national organization, CCA organization, is helping to attract to those Justice 40 communities. So short answer is yes, it can be done, but it's obviously a detailed, you know, response.
Yeah, just to add that there's huge, every tax credit in the whole IRA practically gets bigger if you do it in a low-income community or for low-income individuals, and so there's just an awful lot of funding that can go that direction, and And a CCA is one way to unlock that, I think.
Yeah, and one of the things in the breakout, Dave, I think we touched on it. In addition to procuring renewable energy, the CCA can act as a lot of education and outreach to environmental justice communities on weatherization, on things that are 100% paid for that they wouldn't find otherwise, because you have somebody dedicated to going through those programs and bringing them to those people, and even to people who don't have internet and can't find these things. So the CCA can be used by that community to really target those disadvantaged communities.
I wanted just to express my appreciation. I think this is terrific, and I found it very rich and quite beyond my imagining. And the CCA is utterly new to me, and something I very much would like to get more of was Paul's presentation. I felt like he was just getting started and he had a whole lot more to say. I wonder in the other breakaways if it was similar, and wondered if there's any way to continue those, or to give him an opportunity, or those other presenters an opportunity to share what they had prepared but were perhaps not able to present.
I think we will be doing a lot more of this, as Pat was saying. I think that we'll be following up with more than just one additional webinar. So just stay tuned, and we'll figure it out and get back to everyone.
Kathleen, do you have a question?
Yes. Is there anything we need to do to encourage the House not to reduce funding for this? Is the funding vulnerable?
No funding. You're talking about the Federal House of Representatives? No, the law has passed and it will be implemented. So the current chaos in the House of Representatives won't interfere.
Thank you, friends, for spending this time with us.
Thank you for putting it together. Terrific.
Well, it's wonderful to be with all of you. So I think the day has ended, and I think we could end with a bit of worship. Thank you again, friends. We will follow up with emails and information about how you can access more information.